Good morning and welcome. My name is Mark Baber and I work for Sony, and we are on the Cons Cameras Facebook Live channel this morning. So good morning to you all, and I hope you're all well. So please, those of you that are tuning in, we've got a good audience at the moment, which is great. So thank you so far for tuning in. Please make yourself known. I know we've got Des has just said Kalani Woods. So good morning to you, Des. And please let us know where you're from, and we'll say hello to you this morning on the Cons Cameras Facebook Live channel. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to be talking to Jon Edwards. I can see Jon waiting in the wings here, so he's ready to go live, but we'll come on to Jon in a second. Jon is the director of photography for and the owner of Naive Studios. So from his point of view, he's going to be looking at telling us about his experience with the A7S Mark III. If you haven't got your orders in already, then please do, because there's obviously quite a big demand on the product at the moment. Also, if you're tuning in, stay with us to the end, because we're going to share with you a couple of offers that Cons Cameras have kindly put together with my colleague from Sony, one of our account managers over in Ireland, and we're going to be offering you something that I don't want to give too much away now, that will give you some extra money off going forward at this seasonal time. What else are we going to talk about? Well, look, first of all, those of you that know, obviously, Cons Cameras will know that they're fantastic customer service and been around for a number of years. But as we do these webinars, we obviously have a more wider global audience. And this will be, once it's finished, left on the Facebook channel for Cons Cameras for you to watch and look at another stage. So what do we know about Cons Cameras? Well, it's a family-owned business, and it's run by Mike and Bob Con. And they're both the second generation of the Cons family that run the business. And Mike's kids, Ellen and Jack, are also now involved with supporting the business, I think, in the photo lab and their logistics department as well. But as, like all of us, we're continuing to evolve and face the challenges that we have with a global pandemic. It's especially quite tough for our independent retailers. So our full support, obviously, goes out to all the retailers across the UK and Ireland supporting Sony. But just to let you know, obviously, the whole team take a massive interest in photography and the technology. And so, of course, customer service is excellent. And I vouch for that with the amount of times that we've supported Cons and been over in Ireland to support them. And of course, the store is still open. It's not open to visit, but it's open from 9 to 6, Monday to Saturday, for a shop-to-door service, as well as providing call and collect and click and collect. And of course, any assistance that you need or advice, give the guys at Cons an email or give them a call on the phone. And they've asked me to say that they are obviously delivering throughout Ireland or beyond for online orders. So just a little bit about Cons. I think that's good to paint the picture for those of you who don't know anything about Cons Cameras. And like I said, if you've got any questions for ourselves today, so that's both myself and Jon Edwards, obviously please share that with us, and I'll bring your comments up on the webinar so that we can have a look and share those with you. So again, before I go to Jon, what we're going to do, I'm just going to play a reel that's going to give you a good idea about Jon's content and Naive Studios, what they're about.
Typically portrayed as having been raised by wolves.
The number you have reached is not in service. Try your call again.
Naive.
So let's bring in Jon, and good morning, Jon. How are you?
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, not bad at all, thanks, Jon. Not a bad day out there, but thanks ever so much for joining us. And I mean, the naive reel there. I mean, tell us about your business. Tell us about where you've come from. What's your journey been? Let's give the audience a bit of an idea of who you are and what Naive Studios is all about.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I'm Jonathan Edwards. I'm 37. I guess I started really taking film work seriously in around 2013. I put in a short film to a Sony Production Awards, and at the time I was doing very little with film work really, just hobby kind of stuff on the side. And strangely, it won like the commercial category of it. It was a little skate park video to promote a new skate park in our local area. It was shot on just a DSLR at the time. I think it was a Nikon one that I had. I was mainly taking stills really. So from there, I got a huge amount of support from Sony, which was amazing. I got gifted a FS700 at the time, slow motion camera. And from that, I fell straight into really utilising that, 240 frames a second and 120 frames a second. And I spoke with Sony and they asked me to kind of make a little demo reel of the camera. So I spent the rest of that, I think I won it early springtime. I received it at the beginning of the summer, and by the end of the summer, I put together like a show reel with the camera for them and covered a range of topics that I thought suited slow motion. So alongside that, they gave me some training, which was amazing, and I had some training at Pinewood Studios down in London, and they taught me how to color grade S-Log correctly, and lighting, and just even like shooting on the cinema cameras. So from that, I kind of then realised that I might be able to take the film work as a job, or kind of look towards doing so and seeing how that works, like kind of dipping my toe in the industry, I guess, by going to Pinewood and it being so exciting. And yeah, from there, I bought I bought a Sony A6000 at the time as a B cam, and started steady camming with that, and then used the big camera on a tripod a lot. And yeah, it just built from there, really. I think after that, the next big step really was I started shooting some BMX videos, which were paid, and some hotels and restaurants, and that was all fine. The BMX work was always around, I don't know, £500 a video, and it would take 6 months to make someone, doing their best tricks, or due to like injuries. Like one guy broke both his elbows. It was just horrific, and he was out for a long time. So that had to stop for months of production. So from there, I kind of started with some fashion work and liked how it was more than one take. You could kind of tailor stuff. It was more creative. And I guess the more I got serious about the film work and not just my other hobbies like bike riding or whatever it was, I kind of realised how that might become a job for me, and how that would work. So off the back of that, I sold a series, bizarrely, to a massive men's fashion platform. I just wrote out a list of like the top 5, and I'd already shot this video. And I sent it out to like the top 5 fishing, and the second one in came back. So that kind of really set me up, really. I did a year's worth of content for them. And then off the back of that, just got offers, because the platform's so big and you pay to advertise on there anyway. It kind of set me up that people might want to use me directly for content. So that was really good, yeah. And then from then, I've kind of used Sony Alphas the whole time. So I flipped the FS700 camera as newer models were getting released, and I bought 2 Alphas, which seemed a bit strange at the time to go from like having this cinema camera to the Alpha range, but it was the A7S II by then, and the quality was amazing. So yeah, it was absolutely fine. I had no problem in doing so. So yeah, so that was kind of roughly the journey, I guess.
And still, the A7S Mark II obviously still a very good seller for us, and no doubt for cons cameras as well. Just before we go on, John, I'm going to say to the audience, if you do have questions, please throw them at us, because it's a great opportunity to talk to an independent filmmaker using the kit. We'll come on to the A7S Mark III in a second. One question I was going to ask you, John. I mean, the reel's excellent. I love the look. I love the grading. I love the movement. How many people would you normally have on a shoot? If and we're coming up to some content in a second you're going to show us, but how many people would you normally have on a shoot?
So, massively varied, really. So depending on budget. So on the smaller jobs, there's normally I work very closely with a photographer normally, Jacob Taylor. So on a lot of stuff it would be say myself and Jacob, and maybe one assistant or a digi if Jake needed a laptop on set to check images. Ideally on a bigger set like what you're going to see shortly, you're talking more anything between maybe 8 to about 15 people, I guess. Just depending on budgets really, and what people are going to put in. So say on this last shoot, it's a hype shoot and hype clothing, and with that there was, I think, four lighting guys, like lighting techs on hand, because we had a range of setups in like a container yard, so the light needed to be moved and see what Docker, the creative director, had decided on. And then stuff like, I think we had two motocrossers in who were like stuntmen essentially. They sell themselves as that. So there was two of those, two models, I think 3 assistants, a stylist, a makeup artist. Just all the things that you get within a fashion shoot, really. A BTS guy, obviously, thanks to him, George Hayes, who put together what you'll see.
And the content you put together as well is exclusive for this webinar. So this is exclusive for cons cameras. And so thanks again for doing that, because obviously this was done pre-lockdown. So thankfully we got that in time for this webinar. So we'll show that in a second. But so the A7S III, I mean, first thoughts? I think you've got the camera there as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got the camera here, yeah. This is what I shot that campaign on, and I think now I've shot maybe 3 or 4 campaigns on the camera. So yeah, super happy with it. I kind of knew I would be. It was one of those things where from the specs and what they were suggesting, it was everything I wanted out of an alpha. The A7 III was really good, but obviously it was never going to hit the specs of the S3, because obviously the S was kind of the more pro video line. And that camera surprised me a lot and was fantastic to use. So obviously when, this one's been a long time in the making because of everything it needs to do. But it definitely does do everything I'd like it to do, Like I'm glad in a way that like 8K, 12K and things like that have been ignored, and the real bare bones of what you need, in the current market is there. So any setting, you can have higher frame rate, you can have S-Log, you can have continue autofocus or eye detection, anything across the board is, it's just amazing.
I think for me, and I'm not sure you probably agree, but is that line between consumer and professional is so blurred now that these cameras, obviously there's a cost to the camera, but the fact that this broadcast, beyond broadcast quality in cameras now are freely available to independent filmmakers, vloggers, etc. You've got this technology, and yes, the A7S Mark III has been a desirable camera for a while, and we're obviously very glad that it's here. I've just seen a question here. I think Donald, we're going to bring Donald's question up, so just bear with me a second while I remove a few things.
Yep.
Donald Maloney, good morning. Good question. I got my A7S Mark III a couple of weeks ago, so well done, thank you. In 4K, it's 100 frames per second, not 120. Is that a European thing? Well, Donald.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, just I was speaking to a friend about this. Actually, he rang me up about it. He borrowed the camera for something the other day, and just that if it's set in PAL, it will be on the higher frame. It'll be 100 frames, and if it's set to NTSC, because of American television formats, it will be 120. So I normally just because unless I'm doing something that's going to be TV, broadcast, actually aired, most of the time I shoot on NTSC just because of the extra frames, and I just like the look of it really. Also 24 frames a second on some of the earlier cameras, you couldn't shoot 24 frames a second unless you were in NTSC, so it was another reason to be in American format, just to make it look more cinematic on normal speeds. So
awesome. Donald, we'll come back to your other question as well, and just for you to think about, John. Donald says, and let's just get rid of the overlay here. How do you view your footage once you upload it, pre-importing it to Premiere and Final Cut Pro? Let's come on to that in a second, but let's have a look at... So thank you, Donald. We will come back to that. And again, please throw your questions at us and take advantage of, obviously, myself from Sony, and obviously John, our independent filmmaker, owner of Naive Studios. So let's bring up the... let's get rid of that. Sorry, Donald, we're just going to remove you off the screen there. Let's have a look at the outside of the camera as well. So I've got some pre-recorded footage here that... what were your... So just unmute the mic.
Camera-wise, I love where the new record button is, because I just feel like on some of the earlier models it felt a bit of an afterthought that it was put on the side corner, and it was okay, and I got used to it, but now it's kind of got a dominant position on the top, which is great. Seems like a very minor thing, but it's a major thing I think really in film work. The 2 card slots is great. You've got you can overflow cards and you can mix cards as well, which is really good. You can do the Express A or the SD. Flip out screen now is really good. Obviously, like if you're shooting low or shooting high, you can move that around, or even if you want to film yourself with it, it's good. What else about the camera? Just all the inputs on the side now are really good as well. There's just additional, and like having 2 streams of audio recording is really good if you need it. We shoot some branded documentary stuff, so that's really nice to have. So you can quad channel audio.
How did you find the viewfinder?
Yeah, the viewfinder is really good. Yeah, it's definitely improved, and obviously the screen as well. The screen quality is really good. It's really nice. I almost for the stuff I've been doing lately, I haven't used an external monitor with it. I have been strangely on the slightly older FS5 that I have. I find I need it with the screen being slightly smaller. But yeah, I definitely for this, I don't even bother. I just use the back of the screen. I'm so used to it, I guess, that yeah, it's really good. But yeah, that was the setup on the last job. Just a 40mm lens on it, so I didn't have to switch that. Yeah, worked really well. Still got the plate left on the bottom from the gimbal. Yeah, battery life as well. I guess that's a big important thing. And obviously with the more recent versions of the alphas, the battery life's amazing now. Where a couple of years ago it was criticised, or you got 2 batteries with the camera, which suggested they'd run out quicker. These are fantastic. I think on the last shoot, shooting 4K, 24 frames for about 8 hours, and the battery was only down to about 30% or something by the end of the evening, and it'd been really cold conditions as well, so really good.
I think there's always a caveat when we state longevity of battery capacity, but I think again, talking and working with industry photographers, filmmakers, it's clear that it's a good guideline, but there is evidence that you can push it even further. So the Z battery, which now you find on the A9 Mark II, the A9, the A7 III, and so on. So most of the releases that we've had in the last year or two has the new battery, and it is double the capacity of the W battery, which you normally find on the Mark II. So a welcome addition to that, especially if you're shooting longer with unlimited recording with the A7S III, and also obviously higher codecs or content. Which leads me on to the spec, John. So let's have a quick look at some of the specs. So 12 million pixel sensors. For those of you that are not aware, obviously we make the pixels a lot larger, so the resolution is dropped when you compare it to, say, an A7 Mark III. And as a result, this obviously lets a lot more light on. We use different circuitry in the sensor as well, which distributes the information a lot faster, which then leads on to the processor as well. So the processor is a lot faster. I mean, how did you find the sensor, John? Especially, say, in low light.
Good. So strange as well. Say even for the photography side of things, I was on that set that we're going to see shortly, and I hit the shutter button rather than the record button, whilst just faffing around doing like a shot of 2 of the lads on motocrosses, and I just the actual image looked quite nice, so I color graded it up in Lightroom and saved that out. I just thought, I'll keep that as it's not needed for anything really, but still. And yeah, even on the iMac at 5K, the quality of it is super nice. Like there's nothing the matter with that image, or I mean, I don't know why you'd really, unless you're shooting mass commercial projects on, say, an A7R or something. It shoots really nice stills as well. You could be doing a lot of commercial work on it. There's no reason not to.
That's a really good point, actually, because if you think about when the product was released, the amount of content, and including this webinar, is very focused on video. But I have to say, we will be doing more webinars in the future around A7S III photography. But yes, it's a more than capable stills camera. For those of you watching, don't be put off by the lower resolution. The low light performance on this, I mean, was second to none in the S2 anyway, but the S3, it just pushes the boundaries, and I've seen people shooting in hundreds of thousands, both in stills and video, and getting some amazing results. So let's carry on looking at some of the spec. Obviously, incredible dynamic range, but the big thing in the video side for us, first time in our cameras, our consumer cameras, that is 4K 60p, so full pixel readout on the sensor, a slight cropping, 120, 4K, obviously 240p, full HD, and again for Donal you need to obviously make sure you're in PAL, in NTSC and not PAL, and of course 422 10-bit internal recording. What was your opinion? Let's compare this to the A7S Mark II. I mean, what were the big differences for you?
Yeah. On the 120 now, and it's 4K. It's not HD. That's massively helpful. Say on the older cameras, you'd frame up the shot, and then you'd hit record, and it would then crop in. And obviously, with shooting long days, you don't really want to hit record and then frame up a shot because it's just a bit backward. You just naturally you wouldn't do that. So either you kind of programmed your mind to the camera of days of old that you knew how much it was going to punch in, whereas to now, obviously, what you see is what you get, and that's just fantastic. That you can shoot in 4K, you have no crop. Well, say the slight crop, even in 120, it's already there, so you can see it. So you don't have to rejig everything. It's all ready to go. The 60 is really good as well. I took my kids just for a walk around the park when I first got the camera and shot them all in 60 instead, because I kind of wanted it a bit more haphazard, and it was all handheld, and it looks really fun. I haven't had the time to edit that with all the commercial work, something of Christmas, I imagine. But yeah, it looks super clean, super nice. So that's exciting with it as well. The 422 as well, like that's so nice. I think in the video we'll play after as well. There's some seen by a fire, and they're lit purely by the fire, no additional lighting. We wanted it ambiently lit, and that's all shot 24 frames, 4K, 422, and it was amazing. So nice to color grade. Just you had so much flexibility if you wanted to overexpose the image or underexpose the image, and it just didn't fall apart whatsoever. You didn't have to kind of drop the blacks a lot to hide any noise. It's a very, very clean image. Really nice to work with.
I won't spoil any more talking about what we're going to show. Let's show the behind-the-scenes footage that you created especially for this webinar for cons. And then let's have a look if we've got any more questions and talk in more detail about the footage that you've created. So let's play this. Thanks for that, John. I mean, what I love about that, the detail, low light, really simple color throughout, so very appealing. Again, talk us through the concept for this, and I know you said earlier around the amount of people you've got on set for that, which is amazing for such a short piece of film. But I mean, obviously, a lot of work goes into it. So, tell us a little bit more about that for the audience.
Yes, so for that one, it's a bit of a mixed bag at the moment. That the campaign is shot on the A7S III. That's yet to be released or even edited at the moment. I think I'm starting that today. And then I'm really grateful to George Hayes, is the guy who put that together. And so that is me working with the camera on the set with everyone. The only problem that made the brief hard for George, I guess, was that it's a collaboration project for Hype and a brand. I don't even know if I can mention who that is. But so
don't get yourself in trouble now, okay?
Yeah. So with that, George had to dance around it, and the brief was film myself, film Joe Docker, who's in charge of Hype's creative side of things and the director on the project. You can film the lighting guys, you can film some of the motocrossers even, but we can't shoot the models and the garments because they're not going to release for a month. So it's just that usual thing with commercial creative projects where I'd said to Mark originally when we spoke about doing these seminars and webinars, it'd be really good to actually show people commercial shoots and what goes on behind the scenes. And I always feel it's a bit smoke and mirrors. And when I was getting into it, I'd love to see all this stuff, and I never did. But I've started to realise, as much as I'm trying my best to do that, it's hard as well, because obviously seeing it from the client's point of view, it's just additional stress or pain to have people buying around on set shooting something for something else essentially when they're paying for it.
Yes.
So that makes sense. But But obviously George did a really good job of shooting the camera and what we were doing with it. So there you can see it. You can see it set up and balanced on a Ronin S gimbal. Jumped on the back of a motocrosser and got one of them to drag me around, shooting the other one. Yeah, it was really cold as well, and it was a drab. We started at about 6 p.m. in the end when we lit the first scene, and we worked till about 2 a.m. on that shoot.
Wow.
And just stuff like condensation, because there's loads of puddles everywhere and it was drizzling. So keeping that off the cameras. And the Sony was really good. The weather sealing on it was fantastic. Didn't really have to bother. I cleaned it off a little bit here and there where I thought it was getting a bit extreme on it, but there's no worry with it at all. I've had various models now, the alphas, out in conditions, and they've been really good. Yeah, so that was good about it. Low light, obviously not a problem whatsoever. And shooting, I think that whole project, to keep it simple, Joe, the photographer, was shooting stills with the same continuous lighting. So I decided to drop the idea of shooting slow motion on the shoot, because it would take too long for everyone to re-rig scenes to have the light power to shoot the slow motion.
Okay.
So we shot real time instead, because otherwise we did with the first scene, but it took so long to relight and me take readings and say, oh, do you know what, we're gonna have to bump this because I need the shutter higher for slow mo, that we decided to work fast and get everything done. So we weren't there till 9 a.m. the next day or something. That we would shoot 24 frames instead of 120. So it worked well, and that was great. And I guess as far as that goes with a commercial shoot like that, it's just one of those constraints, where you've got multiple people working, and you've just got to kind of get the content needed and all the outfits. So that's what we did with it. But yeah, the camera itself, absolutely fantastic. Stuff like the continual autofocus was great. So when I jumped on the back of the other motorbike, we got the other guy to either offset himself slightly forward or slightly back. And the tracking on the continual focus is amazing. I hit the focus button, it locks on him, I let go of that, and other than that, I just held onto the gimbal for dear life on the back of this motorbike and got dragged along, pointing the camera as best I could central for decent framing or thirds, as he did his thing and did some wheelies and drove around corners fast. And it was really good. You could jump off the back, and I was showing the guys on the motorbikes like what we were doing, so they could get an idea of what I wanted. And it only took about 3 runs, and I didn't have to worry about focus, which was normally the big problem when I was shooting manual lenses a lot of the time, and I didn't trust autofocus, and it wasn't as good. You'd be trying to keep that that distance between you of what you'd set. So especially if you're in low light and you're shooting say 2.8, you've got fallout instantly if people move. But with this, it's just great. You can really make it really dynamic, have really shallow depth of field, make it really cinematic, and you don't have to worry about it. So,
well, John, I'm
really
picking
well.
up there. I'm picking up there. Excellent battery life, weather resistant sealing. For those of you who are not aware, obviously that's been massively improved in most of the new range now, including the A7S Mark III. Low light focusing. Now, yeah, it will focus down to -6 EV. That's the first time we've ever been able to do that in our cameras. I know there's some other cameras out there that do that already. So that's a really, and obviously the autofocus. I think for us, we're obviously we understand a lot of people use manual focus for filmmaking and so on. And I'm fortunate. I don't have a camera at the moment, but I've used it and tested it. I have to say that the autofocus is the coverage. But the autofocus in video is what I'm using here actually on the A7R Mark IV that's streaming onto the webinar is absolutely insane. The amount of, I mean, it's when I say that, I mean reliability, accuracy. I didn't see it hunt, and I was just.
It doesn't skip out. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I shot one thing with it where I was walking past some pillars in a car park. So the pillars were breaking the scene, so I was one side of the pillars and the model was the other. And on the continual focus, you could just walk with the gimbal, they were walking the other side, and it just waits, we go past the pillar and it'd just be sharp again straight away. Or even on a little job, like say recently shoot for a brand, and I didn't really want to do the e-com stuff, but I got dragged into it, and now people want video e-com of product, so either someone walks up and down in a pair of jeans or a t-shirt, and you film that, and it goes on their website as a click-through to see the quality of the garment and the close-ups. And for this, so we decided that the model would walk into shot, just do a full rotation in the jeans, maybe adjust them a little bit to show some details, and walk out of the shot. And it was fantastic with the continual autofocus that I could literally just say, right, rolling, he'd walk in, it would pick him up as soon as he stepped into the frame. He would be there and he would be sharp, and then he'd walk out the other side once he was done. And these were only 8 to 10 second pieces, and it was spot on throughout. So yeah. Good.
Oh, that's really
amazing.
That's really good to hear. Especially, obviously, you know, working professionally and commercially, and obviously making money from this. It's got to be obviously right for you. I think
Exactly.
from my own
that's a big question.
From my own enthusiast level of filmmaking, the real-time tracking, just again something that's come from the A9. You find this in A7R4. You find it even in our compact range as well. It's just the ability to be able to lock on. But again, when I say, you know, you can shoot 10 frames a second, 20 frames a second on the A9 and 2 and so on. That's great, zero blackout and all that. But the ability in video with this camera just to literally, it doesn't hunt, it doesn't move, it doesn't refocus on something else, and using phase detection on the sensor, it's probably the best autofocus that I've used for video in the range in the last 4 years I've worked for Sony. So, you know, again, I think the message there, if you are thinking about either, you know, moving to Sony or from another brand, or you're looking to step up from the A7S II, you know, these features we're talking about here today are all brand new to this model. So you'll see a dramatic improvement, not just in ergonomics and performance, but autofocus, grading, you know, just battery life. And like we showed earlier, the grip, the size, the thumb wheels, the feel of the buttons.
It definitely feels more
and
professional
so on.
again in hand. And the weight of it also is great. It's not too heavy, it's not too light. Strangely, when I balanced it on a gimbal off the A7 III that I'd had previously on it, it was just a front to back weight issue with it, and it was actually balanced left to right. So it's great. It's just really nice in hand. You know, like you said, Mark, it's a bit chunkier. That's really good. As you said as well, with the autofocus in low light, we did a shot on that campaign that you just saw the behind the scenes for, where one of the models walked down between 2 containers, so it's kind of like an alleyway, and it was really dynamically lit from like the back with a hair light, so you kind of haloed the model, and they were silhouetted. And they walked down until they hit like an overhead red light at the front, so it almost looked like he was lit by a street light at the end of the container when he came out. But all the way down, compared to what the photographer was shooting as stills, we were amazed by one, that, like you said, that it would autofocus and eye track like face detection on the model all the way down, even though he was silhouetted essentially, and then to the dynamic range on it as well. But certainly in post with what it is, I think it will still pop. You'll be able to see the garment, you'll be able to see quite a lot of him. So it's made this really kind of weird contrast of a silhouette shot almost being usable as well as like fashion content. So yeah, really strange. Really
excellent.
Cool.
Thank you, John. Let's go back to Donald's question. So I think this is obviously in relation to NTSC footage, and he's also asked another question as well, so we'll come on to that. So maybe we can link these two together. So Donald says, how do you view your footage once you upload it to Premiere or Final Cut? I think this is probably the NTSC footage, so correct me if I'm wrong, Donald.
Yeah.
And hang on, John, sorry, John. Is there any drawbacks in supplying his clients with NTSC footage, particularly as most of his clients are in Europe? He's shooting advertising and documentary work.
Okay, so so firstly with the footage, that's one thing that I also have a slight problem with at the moment and it's nothing to do with Sony, so it's Apple as yet haven't updated the codec recognition in QuickTime. So say if I pull up a folder on the Mac at the moment, I can't preview the files unless I've got Final Cut or Premiere or DaVinci Resolve open to look at the clips as I'm bringing them in. Normally I would open up a folder and I would use the Apple function to color code, you know, clips for each scene, like say this is a beach scene or this is a fire scene or whatever it might be. But currently Apple just need to politely pull their finger out and sort that out, that you can see the footage, you know, and where it is. That's not the case at the moment. The program that works at the moment for that is VLC. So VLC player will let you preview footage. So if you download that, it's free as well. I actually don't like the app, but it's purely down to their logo. It's just really poor. It looks like a traffic cone. I'm not keen on that. So it's just a visual thing. But other than that, it's really good, and you can preview everything in that before you start editing. So that's fine. And then as far as the frame rates and the format goes, Donald, that's absolutely fine. So as long as if you're putting it on, say, YouTube, Vimeo, websites for people, and social content. It won't matter if it's shot in NTSC or PAL. You can export it at whatever you like. 24 frames. I do all my stuff normally. And then 25 or 30, depending on UK or US needs. But obviously, if you're doing something and it's going to go to broadcast and go to TV, probably best to shoot it in the correct format and switch the camera around. But if you're only doing online content, there's no problem at all.
John, I've brought up your details along the bottom of the screen. Maybe Donal can pick up with you after the webinar.
Sure.
So for those of you that want to find out more about John's work and Naive Studios, then visit the link down here, and that will give John's Twitter handles and Instagram handle as well.
Yeah.
So, Donal, it might be worth picking up with John there. John would be more than happy to take that offline for you. So thank you, Donal, for your questions.
Yeah, on the website there's a fill-in contact us form. It's just really super basic, just name, message, send. We'll pick those up and get back to you. Yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you. And again, if there's anybody that really wants to ask questions but haven't asked so far, then again, please pick up with John directly. And if there's any questions for Sony, then please obviously, if you can send them into Cons Cameras, and the guys there will be more than happy to pass them on to me. John, great questions. Lots going on here. We want to try and wrap this up in the next 15-20 minutes. But let's have a look at the Advocates film reel that we've put together as well, because I think there's some additional footage in here of more of the technology from the new camera. Let's say new camera; it's a few months old now. From the A7S III. So let's have a look at that, and we'll come back to any more questions. So this is the Advocates film created by John and Naive Studios. John, superb. I mean, you're showing off a lot of the capabilities of the camera there, especially the low light. I mean, talk us through it with this one as well, how this concept came about. I think there's some kind of story in there, which I'm quite intrigued about, what it's all about. So
that won't make total sense at the moment, because that's not the full film. It's not going to release till January, but I was excited.
Sorry, my fault.
No,
press the wrong button then.
So with it being A7S III, I thought I wanted to jump on it and see what it was like. Anyway, I wanted to color grade it, wanted to cut it. Quite an exciting project because it's more story driven. So yeah, essentially the idea for the brand is it's quite a premium brand. I think that price point on garments is quite expensive, so they wanted to put more to it. And with that, they went down the lines with the garments as well as the campaign of like mods and rockers. And the story of the clash of the mods and rockers on Brighton Beach, I think don't quote me on this, but the late 60s, early 70s. I'm not 100%. But so there's little nods there. So say the last scenes of the guys coming together and making amends. They're throwing deck chairs on the fire, which I think a lot of deck chairs were burnt on Brighton Beach with the riots between the two groups. So there's just like little intricate details. Obviously, we went down to Brighton as well and shot, which was it was good and it was fun. I felt like I was in Philip Bloom territory with the same camera. That was quite bizarre. So we went and shot early morning on the beach there for the opening scenes, and I decided I'd literally just got the camera, and I wasn't sure about how much I could store on a card, and I knew the guys wanted quite a lot from the shoot, so I played it safe and I shot that footage on HD instead. So that's all 120 frames HD 8-bit. Which I thought was still interesting because obviously how was the color going to be different from what I'm used to with the A7 III? Would it benefit? Would it not? And it definitely did massively, and I felt like it really held up as well. to my other worry, obviously, then was what's it going to be like alongside the 4K footage.
Of course.
But obviously, yeah, but obviously shooting in daylight and all the rest of it, it was great. No problem at all with it. It looks really nice. Really happy with the content and the color out of that. And we shot the bathroom scenes, which was internal. I thought that was a good test again on auto white balancing, which is something I use a lot of, and I know a lot of people, film-wise, would kind of shake their head at, but I think it's really good. So obviously I can dial in kelvins, and I know all the color temperatures, and that's fine. But when you've got mixed light sources, you're like, well, do I go with one or the other? Do I go with the daylight window, or do I go with the tungsten light and all the rest of it? With that, easier for the camera, I guess. It was all tungsten. It was inside some toilets in a nightclub, essentially, that they booked. But yeah, it worked really well, really solid all the way through. Didn't really have to tweak anything with the white balance in post. So yeah, another good one I'd say that you don't need to shy away from now. You say if you shoot club or live events, I know there's always mixed light sources and stuff like that. You could shoot on auto white balance, and it just make life easier for yourself. Yeah, and then obviously the fire thing.
Thanks, John. I'm just looking if we've got any more questions here. I think I think Donald will probably pick up with you separately.
Yeah.
Just flicking through the spec now in relation to the footage you've obviously put together. I mean, one thing for me, I think that's had really good feedback across the globe on its release is we've talked about size and weight, we've talked about speed, we've talked about the weather resistance, frames per second, all that. Is rolling shutter. Was there any evidence of that in your footage? I mean, looking at what you've shared with us, there clearly isn't. But how did you get with that one?
Yeah, really good. So say, obviously, the time I normally pick up rolling shutter or notice it is if I start moving the gimbal around fast, and especially if you're shooting in normal speeds, you're going to start to see, that warping or that jello a little of like the mixture of how it's read off the sensor normally. But nothing at all. Footage is really good. I've had no problems with it. I've done some like drop pans and some dips and some turns on stuff. And nothing at all. Especially like say in those scenes where the mod is running down the street and then he's taking a breath in an alleyway. We wanted that all shot real time, so it looked a bit more haphazard and kind of energetic. And normally I'd be really worried or be doing very little camera movement with that. But when he kind of crashes into the alleyway and runs off, we shot all that at normal speed, and I just ran with him and made the camera move as he moved to emulate that movement. And no problems at all with the rolling shutter. Also on that, Mark, so the very last scene in the video is a pullback, and it's in a wood. It's a very uneven floor, and it's it's on the gimbal, but the gimbal will only do so much. But the camera stabilization now as well with it is improved, and I would never normally run a clip. I wouldn't have said in a commercial project that long. I know the lads wanted it from the shoot, like the brand owners had briefed it in, that they wanted the two guys stood at the fire, and it started head and shoulders, and it pulled right back to a full view, full body, full fire burning. So for that, I had to walk maybe 10, 15 foot back to fit it all in, because I was shooting on a 40mm, I think, because I didn't want any distortion on the close-up of the head and shoulders. And I was dubious, how that was going to work. We did it about 4 or 5 times, as someone spotted me that I didn't fall over some logs or whatever. And there was a few moments where someone thought it was funny to not spot me and let me. It worked really well. I think the third go, it was one of those ones that just felt right, like the gimbal had locked its position and hadn't moved. And in post, done very little to it. It looks perfect. It was workable straight away. So
and that's really good to get.
Shots and stabilization is good.
Yeah, so really good to get across the stabilization element, because that's obviously been improved, and in comparison to the S2. Just looking at some of the codecs as well here. I mean, obviously you experience with the cards, the CF Express Type A cards now can be used in the camera as well as SD cards. So I think the
cards to hand. So this is what I've been shooting on at the moment as well. So these are Sony Tough cards, and I've been shooting in the H24.
264.
264 codec at the moment rather than 265. I know the 265 is much smaller, but it's just sorting that out afterwards in post. So just for speed, I've still been shooting in 264 at the moment. But so these are the cards that I'm using at the moment. They're Sony Tough cards. Initially, I didn't do enough research, and I bought some ScanDisk cards because I always use ScanDisk, and they're not up to spec yet on the camera. So even the top line card. I spent quite a lot of money on those, and they won't work. So you want to look more towards the Sony cards, or I think there's another couple of brands that do the same spec. But yeah, these cards really good, and obviously you can shoot up to 4K at 120 then, so you're really opening up the camera.
John, thanks for that.
Yeah,
it's a really good point around cards because when you do get the camera, just obviously look at there's so much information out there about file formats, bit rates, resolution, etc., recording settings, and have a look at that first. Obviously, make sure that that's compatible with the cards that you got. If not, then yes, you may need to invest. And I think we also talked not just the cards, but the hardware as well. So playing it back on your Mac PC, that's obviously important.
Yeah. So just one of those things like normal with technology. I guess like I bought an A7 III 3 years ago before I just flipped that and sold it. So at the time, everything I had card wise and hardware wise was what I was naively aiming to use with the A7S III. Obviously, things have changed, and you're shooting in much higher recording formats and codecs. So cards have moved on, and these are great. And then also. Hardware, I've just invested in a new iMac, the 2021, and up the RAM in the machine just to make sure everything will play real time and doesn't drop any frames. It's just ironing out the creases, I guess. It's the knock-on effect of changing something in your kind of gear, and you might have to change some other bits, to make that work or to my speed, I guess. So
Thanks, John. Good advice. Let's just finish on. Color science, I think it's very clear you've matched the color science quite well. Did you see it? Obviously the A7S III versus 2 is going to be different. How did you get over that?
Yeah, I think the skin tones much nicer now. I used to find them a little bit red, and you'd have to deal with that as another kind of color mask layer and stuff. And it was fine to get on with, but it was giving you another job each time if you wanted it 100%. To put out what you were happy with. Whereas now it's perfect. It just looks really nice. I noticed it first on I've got this Sony FS5 Mark II, and we shoot a lot of handheld work with that and documentary work. But now the new Alpha, the A7S III matches that, and it's great. You can literally color up the project as you want, and you're not doing any additional layers really to kind of sort anything extra. So really happy with that.
Brilliant. Look, John, we're going to have to start wrapping this up now. The other thing is the battery on my earphones is just going to go as well. So to reduce any echo, I suppose that's a great thing about doing things live. So look, John, thanks ever so much, and I'll just bring up your details again on the screen. Naive Studios. If you want to contact John and see more about John's work, please have a look here. And of course, currently in Ireland, sorry, John, we have cashback on, so up to €300 off. And Cons Cameras have kindly put together an offer for those of you that are looking to purchase Sony gear. So a 24 or 36-month contract with their service provider, interest-free credit service provider, Hum by Flexi. They Flexify over €3,000, a €40 setup fee and a $350 monthly fee on the account. Please talk to the guys directly about that, and that is exclusive for Sony users looking to help spread the cost. And here's the code. So this will run until the 21st of November. It's Naive 10 PC, so NAIVE 10 PC. Type that in and you'll get 10% off Sony purchases over £500. So if you think about interest-free credit, it's coming up to Christmas and so on. Probably a good time. You've got cash back as well, up to €300 off, a selective list. So go to the website of Cons Cameras to check which ones they are, and of course 10% off over 500. So you could save a bit of money here on the back of that. So thank you to our colleagues in Sony Ireland, and obviously Cons Cameras, Mike and Bob and the team. And just a quick thank you to Gareth as well for helping us support and put this together. I know you were off yesterday, Gareth, so thanks ever so much for doing a bit on your day off as well. So thanks ever so much for doing that, and I think we've had him in the wings somewhere as well. So again, all I can say is thank you, John, for your time today and putting all that exclusive content together for Cons.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's really nice to do. Thank you, Sony. Thank you, Cons. And thank you, Mark.
Absolute pleasure. And again, thank you to those of you that have tuned in live today. This will be embedded in the Facebook page for Cons Cameras, and we have recorded, and I think the guys at Cons are going to do something with that as well. So without further ado, thank you ever so much. Have a great day, what's left of it, and thanks for tuning in. And don't forget, the A7S Mark III is available from Cons Cameras, and visit the website for more details. Okay, thanks a lot, and have a great day. We'll see you again soon.